My daughter shouted, "You're dead to me." So I walked away. 6 months later, she was standing outside my house crying. The day my daughter told me I was dead to her, the world didn't end with a scream. It ended with silence. I stood in the middle of her spotless living room, surrounded by expensive furniture I'd never have dreamed of buying for myself. Crystal lights sparkled above us, and soft music drifted from hidden speakers. Everything in that house looked perfect. Everything except us. Emma's face was red with anger. Her hands trembled as she pointed toward the front door. "Just leave." I didn't answer. She took one step closer, tears filling her eyes. "You never respected my choices. You always think you're right. Ryan is my husband, and if you can't accept him, then you're not welcome here." Ryan stood a few feet behind her with his arms folded across his expensive suit. There wasn't a trace of sadness on his face. Only satisfaction. I looked at the young man my daughter had married 18 months earlier. He met my eyes for only a second before smirking. That tiny smile told me everything. This wasn't just another family argument. It was exactly what he wanted. I slowly reached into my pocket, pulled out the spare house key Emma had given me years earlier, and placed it carefully on the hallway table. "I never wanted to lose you," I said quietly. Emma shook her head. "No." Her voice cracked. "I lost you a long time ago." Then she shouted the words that echoed through every lonely night afterward. "You're dead to me." The room became painfully quiet. Ryan slipped one arm around her shoulders, pretending to comfort her. I noticed she leaned into him without realizing it. I wanted to tell her the man beside her wasn't protecting her. He was isolating her. But fathers sometimes learn that truth arrives too late. So I simply nodded. "I hope one day," I whispered, "you remember that I loved you before anyone else ever did." Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't argue. I didn't look back. Rain had begun to fall by the time I reached my old pickup truck. I sat behind the steering wheel for several minutes before starting the engine. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not because I was angry. Because I remembered another rainy afternoon 28 years earlier. Emma had been 6. She'd fallen off her bicycle and scraped both knees. She climbed into my lap, crying harder than I'd ever seen. "Daddy, I'm here. Promise you'll never leave me." "I promise." Back then I believed promises lasted forever. Life has a cruel sense of humor. People often assume losing your child happens in a single moment. It doesn't. It happens one tiny piece at a time. First they stop calling. Then they stop visiting. Eventually they stop believing you love them. Ryan had entered Emma's life 3 years earlier. He was handsome, successful, confident. Everyone admired him. At first, so did I. He brought flowers every Sunday. He insisted on paying every restaurant bill. He called me, sir. Looking back, I realized none of that was kindness. It was performance. The first warning came 6 months before their wedding. Emma canceled our weekly breakfast. Then another. Then another. When I asked why, she smiled awkwardly. "Ryan says couples need more private time." I accepted that. Love changes priorities. Or so I thought. Soon Ryan criticized everything. My old truck embarrassed him. My clothes looked outdated. My advice was, from another generation. Emma laughed at his jokes. At first. Later, she repeated them herself. After my wife, Sarah, died from breast cancer, Emma had been only 9 years old. The doctors apologized. Friends brought casseroles. Neighbors offered sympathy. None of them stayed after the funeral. But Emma stayed. Every night she'd crawl into my bed because she couldn't sleep alone. I'd hold her until sunrise. I learned how to braid hair by watching online videos. I burned dozens of dinners before finally making edible spaghetti. I attended every school play, every soccer game, every parent meeting. When she wanted piano lessons, I sold my fishing boat. When college acceptance letters arrived, I worked overtime for nearly 6 years to help pay tuition. I never regretted a single sacrifice. Not one. Watching your child chase dreams is worth every aching muscle. 2 weeks after our final argument, I sold my house. It was too big for one man. Every room reminded me of laughter that no longer lived there. I packed only what mattered. Sarah's wedding ring, old family photographs, Emma's handmade Father's Day cards, a faded teddy bear she'd forgotten years ago. Everything else stayed behind. I bought a small cottage beside Willow Lake, nearly 4 hours away. Most people there didn't know my story. That was exactly how I wanted it. My new house had peeling white paint, a tiny porch, and a garden overrun with weeds. Perfect. Every morning I drank coffee while watching the sunrise over the water. No arguments. No accusations, only birdsong. The silence hurt at first. Eventually, it became peaceful. One afternoon my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, waved from across the fence. "You must be the new fellow." I smiled. "David, I'm Margaret." She handed me a basket of homemade muffins. "My husband always said lonely people shouldn't eat breakfast alone." I laughed softly. "I think your husband was a wise man." "He was." She paused. "But he was also stubborn." "So was my wife." Margaret noticed the sadness in my eyes. "Lost her 9 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." She looked toward the empty chair beside mine. "Sometimes love leaves an empty seat." I nodded. "It does." For the first time in months, someone understood without asking questions. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. I repaired old furniture, volunteered at the community garden, helped neighbors fix fences. Children riding bicycles waved whenever they passed my porch. Life slowly stitched together pieces of a heart I believed was beyond repair. Yet every evening, before bed, I looked at my phone. No missed calls, no messages, not even on Father's Day. Still, I never blocked Emma's number. Because fathers don't stop hoping, even when hope hurts. One chilly October evening, I opened an old photo album. The first picture showed Emma at age 5 covered in chocolate cake after her birthday party. Another captured her high school graduation. Another showed us dancing together at her wedding. I stared at that final picture for a long time. She looked unbelievably happy. So did I. I whispered into the empty room. "I hope you're okay, sweetheart." Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, only silence answered. But hundreds of miles away, Emma's perfect life was already beginning to crack in ways she never imagined. 6 months passed without a single call. Not one message, not one birthday card, not even a simple, "How are you, Dad?" At first, every morning I reached for my phone before making coffee. After a while, I stopped expecting it to ring. Life has a strange way of teaching you to live with pain. It never disappears, you simply learn how to carry it. My little cottage by Willow Lake slowly became a home. The neighbors knew me as the quiet widower who always helped fix broken fences, repaired bicycles for neighborhood kids, and volunteered every Wednesday at the local food pantry. People smiled when they saw me. For the first time in years, I smiled back. Meanwhile, nearly 4 hours away, Emma's life looked perfect to everyone else. She lived in a beautiful 2-story house. She drove a luxury SUV. Her social media was filled with smiling vacation photos, fancy dinners, and designer clothes. Friends commented, "You two are relationship goals. Perfect couple, living the dream." Emma always replied with heart emojis. But photographs never tell the whole story. The cameras never captured Ryan's temper after the guests went home. They never recorded the insults whispered behind closed doors. "You'd be nothing without me. Your father filled your head with stupid ideas. Don't question my decisions." Little by little, Ryan isolated her from everyone who truly cared. First her father, then her college friends, then even her coworkers. Emma kept telling herself every marriage had difficult days. She wanted to believe love required sacrifice. She had no idea she was sacrificing herself. One rainy Friday evening, Emma accidentally picked up Ryan's phone while it buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message flashed across the screen. "Melissa, can't wait until your wife signs those papers. Dinner tomorrow." Emma frowned. "What papers?" Ryan walked into the kitchen. His face changed the moment he saw his phone in her hand. He snatched it away. "Don't touch my phone." "Who is Melissa?" "A client." "Then why is she talking about me signing papers?" Ryan's expression turned cold. "I don't owe you an explanation." Emma stared at the man she'd defended against her own father. "I asked you a simple question." Ryan laughed. "You sound exactly like your father." Those words hit harder than he realized. For the first time, Emma didn't hear them as an insult. She heard them as a warning. Over the following weeks, strange things kept happening. Money disappeared from their joint account. Ryan stayed out later each night. Bills arrived that Emma had never seen before. One afternoon she visited the bank. The manager frowned while checking the records. "Mrs. Collins, these transfers were authorized." "What transfers?" "Nearly $300,000. Emma felt the room spin. "I never approved anything." The manager turned his monitor. There was her signature. Or at least, something that looked like it. Emma whispered, "That's not my handwriting." The manager looked concerned. "You may want to speak with your attorney." That evening she confronted Ryan. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. Instead, He calmly poured himself a glass of expensive whiskey. You forged my signature. Ryan shrugged. It's our money. It was my inheritance from Mom. So, Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. You stole from me. Ryan smiled, a smile she suddenly recognized. It was the same smile her father had seen months earlier. The smile of someone who believed he had already won. I invested it. In what? My future. Our future. Ryan looked directly into her eyes. No, my future. 3 days later, Ryan was gone. His closet was empty. His passport had disappeared, so had thousands more dollars. On the kitchen table sat a single envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Emma collapsed onto the floor. Everything around her suddenly felt unfamiliar. The beautiful house, the expensive furniture, the luxury she'd once believed represented success. None of it mattered anymore. She remembered her father's tiny kitchen years ago. Old wooden cabinets, homemade pancakes every Saturday morning. Laughter, love, she had traded all of that for appearances. And now, she had neither. That night, Emma opened a dusty cardboard box she'd never unpacked after moving. Inside were childhood photographs, school certificates, birthday cards, and one Father's Day letter she'd written at age 10. In messy handwriting it read, "Daddy, thank you for always protecting me. I know you'll never let anyone hurt me because you're the best father in the world. I love you forever." The tears came so suddenly she couldn't stop them. She read the letter again. Then again. How had she become the woman who screamed, "You're dead to me"? The next morning Emma drove to her old neighborhood. Her father's house stood there. Freshly painted. A different family lived inside. She knocked anyway. A middle-aged woman answered. "Can I help you? I'm looking for David Harper." The woman smiled apologetically. "He sold the house months ago." Emma's heart sank. "Do you know where he went?" "I'm sorry." She didn't. Emma returned to her car and cried harder than she had since childhood. For the first time, she realized she didn't know where her own father lived. Hundreds of miles away, I was repairing a wooden bench beside Willow Lake when my elderly neighbor Margaret approached. "You've got visitors coming soon." I laughed. "I doubt that." She smiled mysteriously. Sometimes life has surprising timing. I had no idea how right she was. Because at that very moment, Emma had finally discovered an old forwarding address tucked inside a file at the post office. She climbed into her car without hesitation. 4 hours. Endless rain. One desperate hope. She didn't know whether I would forgive her. She wasn't even sure I would open the door. But for the first time in 6 months, she was driving toward home. The rain had been falling since sunrise. I was sitting on the front porch with a mug of coffee, watching the drops ripple across Willow Lake. Retirement had taught me to appreciate quiet mornings. There was no rush, no noise, just the wind through the trees and the distant sound of birds. Margaret, my neighbor, waved as she walked her dog. "Morning, David." "Morning. You look happier these days." I smiled. I finally learned that peace isn't something you find. It's something you protect. She nodded. Wise words. After she left, I returned to sanding an old wooden rocking chair I planned to donate to the community center. Then I heard it, a car door closing. I looked toward the gravel driveway. A silver SUV stood there, its headlights cutting through the rain. The driver's door slowly opened. A woman stepped out. For a second, I didn't recognize her. Her clothes were soaked, her hair clung to her face, and dark circles surrounded her eyes. Then she looked up. "Dad." The word barely escaped her lips. "Emma, my little girl." She took 2 shaky steps before stopping. Tears mixed with the rain running down her cheeks. I'm so sorry." Neither of us moved. 6 months of silence stood between us. Finally, she whispered, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I remained silent. She lowered her head. I didn't know where else to go. My heart remembered every cruel word she'd spoken. But it also remembered teaching her to walk. Teaching her to ride a bicycle. Holding her after nightmares. Some memories are stronger than pain. I walked toward her. She looked terrified. Not of me, of the possibility that I might turn away. Instead, I gently placed my old jacket over her shoulders. "Come inside," I said quietly. "You're freezing." The moment she crossed the doorway, she broke down completely. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried harder than I'd ever seen. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." For several minutes, I simply held her. Just as I had when she was a frightened little girl. No lectures, no anger, just a father embracing his child. Inside, I made hot tea while Emma sat wrapped in a blanket near the fireplace. She looked around the small cottage. "It's beautiful." It isn't much. It feels peaceful. I smiled faintly. It became home. She stared into her cup. I destroyed mine. I waited. Eventually, the whole story came out. Ryan's lies, the stolen money, the forged signatures, the affair, the divorce papers. When she finished, she whispered, "You tried to warn me." I did. You were right. I shook my head. This isn't about being right. She looked at me, confused. It's about the fact that someone hurt my daughter. Fresh tears filled her eyes. I don't know why you still love me. I answered without hesitation, because you're my daughter. That evening, Emma noticed framed photographs on a bookshelf. Pictures of her mother, pictures of us when she was little. And one empty frame. She picked it up. Why is this one empty? I smiled sadly. It was waiting for a new family picture. Emma covered her mouth. She couldn't speak. Later that night, as I walked past the guest room, I saw Emma asleep. She was hugging the old teddy bear she'd left behind years ago. The same one I'd packed when I moved. Some things never stop being home. The next morning, I quietly made pancakes. The smell drifted through the cottage. Emma walked into the kitchen and smiled through watery eyes. "You still make Mom's pancake recipe." I never forgot it. She laughed softly. "I haven't had these in years." As we ate breakfast together, it almost felt like time had turned back. Almost. Then there was a loud knock at the front door. 3 sharp knocks. I opened it. Standing outside was a man in a dark suit holding a folder. "Mr. David Harper." "Yes. My name is Michael Turner." He handed me a business card. "I'm a financial investigator." I frowned. "What does this have to do with me?" He looked past my shoulder and noticed Emma. "Actually, it has everything to do with both of you." Emma slowly stood up. The investigator opened his folder. "We've been searching for Ryan Collins for over 3 months. My heart sank. What happened?" The investigator took a deep breath. "He's wanted for multiple counts of financial fraud, and we believe your daughter is his next intended victim." Emma's face turned pale. She whispered, "Oh, no." Emma gripped the edge of the kitchen table as the investigator spread several documents across it. Every page carried Ryan's name. Bank transfers, property records, fake companies, forged signatures. Michael Turner looked at Emma with sympathy. "Mrs. Collins, this wasn't your fault." She stared at the papers in disbelief. I kept thinking, maybe I had done something wrong. Michael shook his head. "Ryan has done this before." "What?" "He targets successful women, gains their trust, marries them, and slowly gains access to their finances. Then he disappears." Emma covered her face with both hands. "So, I was never special to him. You were his next victim." The room fell silent. I reached across the table and gently held my daughter's trembling hand. She squeezed mine tightly, as if she were afraid to let go. Over the next few days, Emma worked closely with the investigators. She handed over emails, bank statements, and copies of contracts Ryan had convinced her to sign. Every document revealed another lie, another betrayal. One afternoon, Michael smiled for the first time. "This is enough." Emma looked up. "Enough for what?" "To arrest him." 2 weeks later, the call finally came. Ryan had been found at a luxury resort under a false identity. He was arrested without incident. As investigators uncovered more evidence, dozens of victims came forward. Some had lost their savings. Others had lost their businesses. One elderly widow had nearly lost her home. Emma realized she wasn't alone. Ryan had spent years destroying lives. Now, justice had finally caught up with him. Several months passed. Emma remained at the cottage while rebuilding her life. She found a new job in a nearby town. Every morning we shared breakfast together. Every evening we walked along the lake. Little by little, laughter returned. One Saturday afternoon she stopped beside the old dock where I often fished. "Dad." "Yes." She looked down at the water. "I've been carrying something inside me." I waited. "The day I screamed those horrible words." She struggled to continue. "I wanted to hurt you because I thought you were standing in the way of my happiness." She wiped away tears. "But all you were trying to do was protect me." I nodded quietly. "I should have trusted you." I smiled gently. "We all make mistakes." She shook her head. "No, this wasn't just a mistake. It was the biggest regret of my life." I placed my hand on her shoulder. "The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who find the courage to stand up again." For the first time in years, Emma smiled without forcing it. A few months later, Emma invited me to the reopening of my old family home. Confused, I followed her to the neighborhood where she had grown up. I stopped in front of the house. It looked exactly as it had years ago. Fresh flowers lined the walkway. The porch had been restored. Even Sarah's favorite white rocking chair sat exactly where it used to. Emma handed me a small envelope. Inside was the deed. Dad, she smiled through happy tears. I bought it back. I couldn't speak. I wanted you to have your home again. My eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to do this. I know. She wrapped her arms around me. I wanted to. That evening we sat together on the front porch, watching the sunset just as we had when Emma was a little girl. After a long silence, she whispered, Dad, yes, the day I told you that you were dead to me. She paused, tears shining in her eyes. I wasn't losing you, I was losing myself. I smiled gently and took her hand. And yet, you found your way home. Emma rested her head on my shoulder, just as she had done as a child. The pain of the past would never disappear completely, but it no longer controlled our future. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't erase the scars. It simply reminds us that love is stronger than the wounds we leave behind. The courthouse looked cold from the outside. Gray stone walls, tall glass windows, dozens of reporters waiting behind metal barriers. Emma stood beside me, nervously twisting the ring her mother had once worn. She had lost weight over the past few months, but something had returned to her face that money could never buy. Hope, you don't have to come in, she whispered. I smiled. I've spent your whole life standing beside you. I'm not stopping today. She lowered her eyes. I don't deserve that. I gently squeezed her shoulder. Love isn't something people earn, Emma. It's something a parent gives. Inside the courtroom, Ryan finally walked through the side entrance wearing handcuffs. For the first time since I had met him years ago, he looked ordinary. No expensive suit, no confident smile, no perfect hairstyle, just another man facing the consequences of his own choices. His eyes briefly met mine. He looked away first. Emma's breathing became uneven. I don't think I can do this. You already are, I answered quietly. The prosecutor spent hours presenting evidence. Forged signatures, hidden bank accounts, fake investment companies, secret transfers. One victim after another stood before the judge. An elderly widow who had lost nearly everything. A retired teacher whose life savings had disappeared. A young business owner forced into bankruptcy. Each story sounded painfully familiar. Ryan had never loved people. He had only learned how to use them. When Emma's name was called, the courtroom became silent. She walked slowly to the witness stand. After taking the oath, she looked toward the judge. Then at Ryan. For a brief moment, tears filled her eyes. But this time, she didn't look frightened. She looked determined. He didn't just steal my money, she began. He stole my trust, my confidence, and almost my relationship with the one person who had loved me unconditionally. Her voice cracked. I chose a stranger over my own father. She glanced toward me. I'll regret that decision for the rest of my life. The courtroom remained completely silent. Ryan's attorney stood. Mrs. Collins, isn't it true your father disliked my client from the beginning? Yes. So perhaps your testimony is influenced by your father's opinion. Emma shook her head. No, my father saw the truth. I refused to. Several days later, the verdict was announced. Guilty. On every count. Ryan showed no emotion. The judge sentenced him to years in prison and ordered financial restitution to the victims. As officers led him away, he looked back one final time. Emma didn't look at him. Instead, she turned toward me and smiled, not because justice erased the past, but because she finally understood who had always been on her side. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward us. Emma, do you have anything to say? She stopped, looked directly into the cameras. Yes, I want to say something to my father. The crowd fell quiet. She walked over and took both of my hands. When I told my father he was dead to me, I believed I was choosing happiness. I was wrong. The man standing beside me never stopped loving me, even after I gave him every reason to walk away. She looked into my eyes. Dad, I'm sorry. I hugged her without saying a word. The cameras captured the moment, but they couldn't capture what mattered most. A broken family had begun to heal. That evening, we drove back to Willow Lake. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't need to. Some silences carry peace instead of pain. As the sun disappeared behind the water, Emma smiled. Dad, yes, when I was little, you used to tell me storms never lasted forever. I remember. I finally believe you. I looked across the lake, where the last rays of sunlight reflected on the calm water. So do I. Life didn't return to normal overnight. Healing never does. The weeks after the trial were strangely quiet. The television stations moved on to other stories, the reporters stopped calling, and Ryan's name slowly disappeared from the headlines. But inside our little cottage by Willow Lake, something much more important was happening. Emma was learning how to forgive herself. Every morning she woke before sunrise and joined me on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. At first, we hardly spoke. We simply watched the mist drift across the lake. One morning she finally broke the silence. "Dad, do you ever think about Mom?" I smiled. "Every single day. What do you think she'd say if she could see us now?" I looked toward the old oak tree beside the cottage. "I think she'd tell us that families aren't perfect. They're worth fighting for." Emma nodded slowly. "I wish I had remembered that sooner." A few days later, she asked if we could visit her mother's grave. We drove to the small cemetery where Sarah had been buried 12 years earlier. Emma carried a bouquet of white lilies, her mother's favorite flowers. She knelt beside the headstone. For several minutes, she couldn't speak. Finally, tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I hurt Dad. I forgot everything you taught me. I let someone fill my heart with pride instead of love." The wind gently rustled the trees. Emma placed the flowers beside the grave and whispered, "I promise I'll take care of him now." I quietly rested my hand on her shoulder. "I think your mother already knows." As autumn turned into winter, our bond grew stronger. Emma found a small house just 10 minutes away from my cottage instead of moving back to the city. "I don't want another mansion," she laughed. "I just want a place that feels like home." Together, we painted the walls, repaired old furniture, and planted flowers in the front yard. One Saturday afternoon, while cleaning out an old closet, Emma discovered a dusty cardboard box. Inside were dozens of drawings she had made as a child. One picture showed 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, in crooked handwriting, she had written, "My family forever." She smiled through tears. "I almost threw this away years ago." "I'm glad you didn't," I replied. Just before Christmas, there was another unexpected knock at my front door. Standing outside was a young woman holding the hand of a little boy. "Mr. Harper." "Yes, my name is Lisa." She looked nervous. "I was one of Ryan's victims." Emma stepped beside me. Lisa continued, "I saw Emma's interview after the trial." She held out a small wrapped gift. "I just wanted to thank both of you for giving people like me the courage to speak." Inside the gift box was a simple wooden ornament. It read, "Hope lives here." Emma couldn't hold back her tears. She hugged the woman tightly. For the first time since everything had happened, she realized that telling the truth hadn't just saved her own future. It had helped many others reclaim theirs as well. On Christmas Eve, our cottage was filled with laughter again. Margaret brought homemade pies. Neighbors stopped by with gifts. Children built a snowman in the yard. Emma watched everything quietly before turning to me. "I used to think success meant having the biggest house." She smiled. "I was wrong." I laughed. "So what does success mean now?" She looked around the room filled with warm lights, smiling faces, and people who genuinely cared for one another. "This." She squeezed my hand. "Having people who love you, even when you've made mistakes." I felt my eyes grow wet. "Your mother would be proud of you." Emma whispered. "I hope so." As midnight approached, snow began to fall outside the windows. The cottage glowed with warmth. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer defined our future. For the first time in a long time, we weren't just surviving. We were living. Spring arrived quietly at Willow Lake. The snow melted, flowers bloomed along the shoreline, and the little cottage that had once been my refuge was now filled with life again. Emma had become a regular part of the community. She volunteered at the food pantry every Saturday, helped children with reading at the local library, and always visited Margaret, who insisted Emma was the daughter she had been hearing about for months. One sunny afternoon, Emma parked her car outside my cottage with a wide smile. "Dad," she called, "I have a surprise." She handed me an envelope. Inside was an invitation, Harper Family Foundation, grand opening ceremony. I looked at her in confusion. "What's this?" She smiled through happy tears. "I sold the last of the luxury things I didn't need anymore. The expensive jewelry, the sports car, and the vacation property. I used the money to start a foundation in Mom's name." "What does it do?" "It helps elderly parents who have been abandoned by their families and supports victims of financial fraud." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Sarah had always believed that pain should be transformed into kindness. Emma had remembered. The opening ceremony was held a month later. The small community hall was filled with people. Some were neighbors. Some were families the foundation had already helped. Others were victims from Ryan's fraud case who had come simply to say thank you. Emma stepped onto the stage. She took a deep breath. Before speaking, there was a time when I believed success meant choosing money over wisdom, appearances over love, and pride over family. The room was silent. I was wrong. She looked directly at me. My father never stopped loving me, even after I gave him every reason to. She paused to wipe away a tear. If you still have someone who loves you unconditionally, don't wait until it's almost too late to tell them how much they mean to you. The audience rose to their feet in applause. I had never been prouder. That evening, Emma and I returned to the lake. The sunset painted the water in shades of orange and gold. She laughed. Remember when you taught me how to skip stones? I remember you throwing the whole rock into the water instead. She laughed even harder. I was terrible. You were determined. She picked up a smooth stone and tossed it. 1, 2, 3, 4 skips. She clapped excitedly. I finally learned. I smiled. Sometimes the best lessons just take longer. As we walked home, Emma slipped her arm through mine. Dad, yes, I've been thinking. About what? I spent so much time chasing the wrong people. She looked at me. From now on, I want to spend my time with the people who never stopped believing in me. I nodded. That's a good way to live. A few weeks later, the front door opened again. This time, it wasn't bad news. Emma was carrying a tiny golden puppy. He needed a home, she said. The puppy ran straight toward me, wagging his tail. I laughed. And what are we calling him? Emma grinned. Chance. Why Chance? Because everyone deserves one. I smiled. Even stubborn fathers. She hugged me tightly. Especially them. Years passed. The Harper Family Foundation grew. Hundreds of families received help. Many elderly parents found companionship again. Victims of fraud rebuilt their lives. Every year on Sarah's birthday, Emma and I planted another tree by the lake. Eventually, there was a beautiful row of trees stretching along the shoreline. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch, Emma looked at them and smiled. Mom would have loved this. I think she does. One quiet evening, Emma handed me a small photo album. The final page held a brand new family picture. The two of us stood on the porch of the cottage, smiling beside little Chance. Beneath the photo she had written, "The day I said, 'You're dead to me,' I thought I had lost my father. In truth, I had only lost my way. Thank you for waiting until I found my way home. I love you, Dad." I closed the album and hugged her. No words were needed. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with forgiveness. Because forgiveness doesn't change the past. It changes the future. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't that someone comes back home. It's that the door is still open when they do. Almost a year had passed since Emma came back into my life. One quiet afternoon, I climbed into the attic of my old house, searching for a toolbox. Instead, I found a dusty wooden chest. Inside were old photo albums, Sarah's recipe book, a faded baseball glove, and a sealed envelope with Emma's name written across the front. I froze. I remembered writing it 6 months after Sarah died. Back then, Emma was only 10 years old. I had been terrified, not of raising her alone, but of what would happen if I wasn't around to finish the job. I had written the letter in case something ever happened to me. When life became busy, I tucked it away and forgot it existed. Until now. That evening, Emma came over for dinner. After we finished eating, I placed the envelope on the table. "I found something today." She looked at the handwriting and immediately recognized it. "Is this yours?" I nodded. "I wrote it years ago." She carefully opened the envelope. The paper had yellowed with age. Her voice trembled as she began to read. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means life didn't go the way I hoped. I don't know how old you are now, but I want you to remember something. The world will introduce you to many people. Some will love you, some will use you. The hardest part is learning the difference." Emma paused, tears already filling her eyes. She continued, "If anyone ever tells you to choose between your family and them, be careful. The people who truly love you never ask you to abandon those who loved you first." She covered her mouth. Those words felt as if they had been written yesterday. I watched quietly. She kept reading. "You'll make mistakes. I certainly have. But don't let one bad decision convince you that you're beyond forgiveness. No matter where life takes you, no matter how angry you become, you'll always be my little girl." By now, tears streamed freely down her face. She reached the final paragraph. "And if one day we disagree so badly that you stop speaking to me, please remember this. My door will never be locked against you." The room fell completely silent. Emma folded the letter carefully and walked around the table. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You wrote this before any of it happened." "I did. You already knew." I smiled gently. "No, I just knew how much fathers love their daughters." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm going to keep this forever." "You should. It's yours." Outside, the evening sun settled over the lake. Inside, the old letter had become more than paper. It had become proof that love can wait, even when people lose their. The morning after Emma read the letter, she arrived at my house before sunrise. She was carrying 2 cups of coffee and a small notebook. "I've been awake all night," she admitted. "Worried?" "No," she smiled softly. "Thinking." We sat on the porch watching the first light spread across Willow Lake. After a long silence, she opened the notebook. "I've been making a list." "A list of what?" "Everything you've ever done for me." I laughed. "That sounds like a very long list." "It is." She looked down at the pages. "When I was 7, you stayed awake 3 nights because I had pneumonia. When I was 12, you sold your fishing boat so I could take piano lessons. When I was 16, you worked double shifts to buy me my first car. When Mom died, you tried to smile every day, just so I wouldn't be afraid." Her voice broke. "I remembered all of it last night." I looked out over the lake. "I never wanted you to keep score." "I know." She closed the notebook. "But I needed to remind myself what real love looked like." Later that afternoon, Emma asked if we could visit the old community center where I had coached children's baseball years earlier. The building hadn't changed much. The same wooden benches, the same dusty trophy cabinet, the same baseball field behind it. As we walked across the grass, an elderly man called my name. "David Harper." I turned and smiled. Tom Wilson had been one of my assistant coaches nearly 20 years earlier. His hair had turned completely white. He pulled me into a hug. "I haven't seen you in years." Then he noticed Emma. "This must be your little girl." Emma laughed. "I don't think anyone has called me that in a long time." Tom smiled warmly. "Your father talked about you every single practice." Emma looked surprised. "He did." Tom nodded. If one of the kids hit their first home run, he'd say, "I can't wait to tell Emma." If someone graduated, he'd say, "I hope my daughter grows up this happy." There wasn't a single week he didn't mention you. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Even after Mom passed away." Tom answered without hesitation, "Especially after." He was determined that you'd never feel alone. Emma quietly stepped away for a moment. When she returned, she wrapped her arms around me. I spent so many years believing I wasn't important enough. I hugged her tightly. "You've always been the most important part of my life." That evening, as we drove home beneath a sky full of stars, Emma smiled. "Dad, yes, I can't change the words I said. No, but I can spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much I love you." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You already have." The road stretched ahead of us, calm and peaceful. For the first time in many years, neither of us was looking back. We were looking forward, together. 3 years passed more quickly than either of us expected. The Harper Family Foundation had grown beyond anything Emma imagined. What began as a small office with 2 volunteers had become a respected organization helping elderly parents who had been abandoned, supporting victims of financial fraud, and offering legal guidance to families facing difficult times. Whenever people asked Emma why she started the foundation, she never talked about Ryan. She talked about me. "My father taught me that love doesn't disappear just because someone makes a terrible mistake," she would say. "Real love keeps the light on until the person finds their way back." Every time I heard those words, I thought of Sarah. She would have smiled. One Saturday morning, Emma arrived at the cottage carrying a small wooden box. I found this while cleaning my office. Inside were every letter, birthday card, and Father's Day drawing I had ever given her. "I kept them all," she said. I laughed. "So did I." I brought out another box from the hallway closet. Inside were every school report card, every crayon drawing, every photograph from her childhood, and even the tiny pink shoes she had worn on her first day of kindergarten. Emma picked up one of the tiny shoes and smiled through tears. "You really kept these. I told you once." "What?" "Parents never stop collecting memories." That afternoon we sat on the porch for hours, sharing stories we had never told each other. Emma confessed how lonely she had felt after losing her mother. I admitted how frightened I had been pretending to be both father and mother at the same time. I thought I had to be strong every single day, I said. You were. No, I was scared. Emma reached over and held my hand. You hid it well. I didn't want you to carry my fears. She smiled. You carried mine instead. As the sun began to set, several cars pulled into the driveway. Margaret stepped out first. Behind her came neighbors, volunteers, and families whose lives had been changed by the foundation. One little girl ran toward me holding a handmade card. It read, "Thank you for helping my grandma smile again." I looked at Emma. She whispered, "This is your gift." My gift. You spent your whole life teaching one person how to love. She pointed around the yard. Now that love has reached hundreds more. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I simply looked around at the people laughing together beneath strings of warm lights hanging between the trees. Years earlier, I had believed my family was gone forever. Now I realized something extraordinary. Family isn't only the people you're born with. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand beside you after they've learned your story. As darkness settled over Willow Lake, Emma stood and gently tapped a spoon against her glass. Everyone fell quiet. I'd like to make one final toast. She looked at me. When I was younger, I believed strength meant never admitting I was wrong. She smiled. Now I know real strength begins with the words. She turned toward me. Dad, I'm sorry. A few people quietly wiped away tears. Emma continued, and I'd like to thank the man who answered those words not with anger, but with an open door. She raised her glass. To second chances. Everyone echoed. To second chances. I stood, my voice unsteady. And to never giving up on the people we love. The glasses clinked together. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Emma and I sat on the porch exactly as we had so many times before. The lake reflected a sky filled with stars. Dad, yes, if you could change one thing. I smiled before she even finished. I wouldn't. She looked surprised. Not even the pain. I slowly shook my head. The pain taught us how precious forgiveness really is. Emma rested her head on my shoulder. I'm home. I looked out across the peaceful water and quietly replied. You always were. The wind carried the gentle sound of the waves against the shore. The porch light glowed warmly behind us. And just as I had promised in the letter she found, the door was still open.